You've probably heard the joke about the drop bear, that fictional carnivorous koala haunting the bush, waiting to land on unsuspecting tourists. But the real story is that Australia has never had a true bear. Koalas get called koala bears all the time. Still, they're marsupials, not remotely related to the grizzlies or black bears of the Northern Hemisphere. So what's the deal? How come the land of kangaroos, wallabies and wombats never ended up with a bear of its own? And more importantly, what if it did? First, a bit of history. Australia's wildlife evolved on a nearly isolated continent for tens of millions of years, long after dinosaurs vanished. Mammals flooded out elsewhere, but Australia was essentially sealed off, so it was colonized mainly by marsupials and a few monotremes like echidnas. By about 25 million years ago, all the major Aussie marsupial lineages, the ancestors of koalas, wombats, kangaroos, bandicoots, and more, were already present here. In other words, ecological niches everywhere were already filled, leaving no open slot for a placental mammal like a bear to just wander in and set up shop. In fact, no land bridges connected Australia to Eurasia, where true bears live, so none ever arrived naturally. When humans and their animals finally came thousands of years ago, the only big placental predators we got were dingoes, arrived about 3,500 years ago. But by then, the evolutionary opportunity had long passed. Every big predator Australia had was a marsupial or reptile, not a placental mammal. So if we're imagining the perfect bear for Australia, we have to start from scratch. What kind of bear-like creature could plausibly evolve in that unique environment? Let's build it piece by piece, borrowing features from real Australian animals and bears around the world. First, body size and shape. This bear wouldn't be as bulky as a polar bear, but bigger than a koala or wombat. Somewhere around 2 to 2.5 meters long from head to tail, and standing up to 1.5 meters tall when rearing on its hind legs, roughly in the same size range as an American black bear or a smaller brown bear. It would likely weigh between 80 and 120 kilograms, heavy enough to handle mid-sized prey, but still light and agile enough to cope with Australia's hotter, drier landscapes. The build would be short-legged and muscular, with powerful shoulders and a thick neck, essentially a wombat's dense frame taken to the next level. For reference, modern wombats reach about 1 meter in length and up to 35 kilos, and this bear would push those proportions into apex predator territory. The body would be short, stout, and muscular, a build that wouldn't look out of place next to a wombat, just scaled way up. Wombats are already dense little tanks of muscle, so it makes sense that an Australian bear would evolve along similar lines but much larger, maybe twice the size. That kind of structure offers serious power, perfect for flipping logs, digging into termite mounds, or wrestling prey. With that build, it would almost certainly walk plantigrade, flat-footed like true bears, giving it better balance and stability when climbing or standing upright. On its head may be a broad skull with a short muzzle. Not a pointed snout like a fox, but more bear-like, enough room for strong jaw muscles. Its ears could be a medium size, possibly larger than the tiny ears of a wombat for better hearing in dense brush, but smaller than a koala's big ears, since koalas don't move around much. Maybe something like a Tasmanian devil's ears, noticeable for feeling vibrations, especially at night. The eyes would be forward-facing for predator vision, like a bear or big cat, not like a horse. It might have a keen sense of smell, crucial for detecting prey underground or hidden in brush. The fur would shift, depending on where it lives. In cooler, wetter regions like Tasmania's eucalyptus forests or the Victorian Alps, it would likely grow a thick, insulating coat, something chestnut brown or dark grey to blend into the shadowy undergrowth. In hotter, drier places, like the outback or the tropical north, the coat would need to be shorter and lighter, helping it stay cool. More of a sandy tan or reddish brown, blending with dry soil and sun-bleached bark. Over time, regional variations could start to show up. A Tasmanian type might end up with long, shaggy fur and even a pale throat patch, while northern populations stick with a sleeker, more heat-adapted coat. Claws would be a prominent feature. Australian ground-digging mammals often have big claws. Wombats have blunt digging claws, koalas have sharp ones, and echidnas have giant digging foreclaws. A bear analog down here would definitely have big curved claws, retractable or not, either way, formidable. Maybe they wouldn't retract fully like a cat's, since most bears' claws are semi-retractable at best. These claws could be used for tearing open termite nests or for climbing trees to raid honeycombs and fruit. What about its tail? Very short, I suspect, like a koala or bear. Nothing dinky like a kangaroo's, more like a small stub just to keep balance or to swat insects. Nothing especially flashy. Now let's consider diet and hunting style. Is it a pure carnivore or more of an omnivore? Given Australia's ecology, I think a true omnivore or opportunist makes more sense, much like most real bears except polar bears. It would likely eat a mix of meat and plant material. For protein, it could take down small to medium-sized animals, maybe wallabies, wombats, even young kangaroos or pademelons. It might lie in ambush near waterholes or dense bush, then rush out to grab prey with its strong forelimbs. Unlike the fleet-footed Tasmanian tiger, our bear would rely on brute strength and stealth rather than speed. It would definitely scavenge too, feasting on carcasses like dingoes and devils do. Bones and tough hides wouldn't faze its jaws. Bears have bone-crushing molars. Its teeth might be interesting, maybe a mix of adaptations. Thylacoleo had saber-like incisors, but our bear, wanting to crunch everything from meat to nuts, might have a more generalized bite. Big canines for seizing, flat molars for grinding seeds or vegetation, like a black or brown bear. In short, it could be reminiscent of a Tasmanian devil on steroids, with a bit of pouched bear DNA. On the plant side of its diet, Australia offers plenty to forage. This bear could climb low eucalyptus branches or stand upright to reach wattle seed pods, berries, or even break into termite mounds for a high-protein snack. Not too far off from anteater behavior. Without the specialized gut flora of a koala, it wouldn't be digesting eucalyptus leaves, but it could still handle tougher plant matter over time. Stripping bark to get at the sweet inner layers, digging up fibrous roots in the dry season, crunching seeds, all fair game. And like most bears, it wouldn't say no to honey. Native stingless bees, wild hives tucked into tree hollows, maybe even sticky potaroo honey blobs. This thing would tear into logs and climb for combs with all the single-minded focus of a sugar-craving bear. In terms of behavior and social life, I imagine it is largely solitary, again like most bears. Each adult probably keeps its own territory, marked by scent and scratch marks. What about activity patterns? With Australia's intense heat, this bear would likely be most active at dawn and dusk, maybe even fully nocturnal during the hotter months. Cooler weather might bring it out more during the day, especially in southern regions. During the peak heat, it would rest somewhere shaded and insulated, maybe curled up inside a hollow log, tucked into a deep burrow like a wombat, or sheltered beneath a rocky overhang. Curled on a bed of leaves, nose twitching for scents in the breeze, it waits out the heat until the light fades and the bush starts moving again. That's when the hunt begins. Wallabies, roots, insects, whatever's on the menu. If it remembers ancestors, maybe it could do something like torpor in really cold climates. Tasmania and the high mountains can get chilly. It might grow a heavier winter coat and slow down, but full hibernation like a grizzly seems unlikely. Perhaps a sleepy state during food-scarce times, but otherwise expert and fairly adaptable. Maybe lazy cat burglar or patient stalker at night. Where exactly would you find this bear? Let's look at real Australian landscapes. One obvious home is the tall eucalyptus forests of eastern Australia. Think Blue Mountains, southern Queensland, Victoria, and Tasmania. In these wet or temperate forests, our bear could climb gum trees for fruit or descend to the forest floor. The ferns and underbrush would provide cover for an ambush. The climate here has cool winters, so a thick fur coat would keep you cozy. These forests teem with possums, pandamelons, cockatoos, all possible prey or companions in the ecosystem. Up north, the floodplains and woodlands of kakadu-like country would be another possibility. In the wet season, it might fish for barramundi or eels. In the dry season, it could hunt wallabies or buffalo calves, drinking from shallow pools. Saltwater crocodiles also live there, so our bear would have to be careful. It might even raid croc eggs or young crocs in quieter backwaters. In more arid zones, like Central Australia's Spinifex Plains or Scrub, the bear would be less common but still present, especially if it can dig for burrowing prey. It could frequent rocky gorges or riverine strips where there's shelter and higher prey density. How would this bear fit with other Aussie wildlife? Well, the dingo would be an interesting character. With dingoes around since 3,500 years ago, our bear would have to share the hunting grounds with them. In practice, they might avoid direct conflict. Perhaps the bear hunts by day, like wombats or echidnas, while dingoes hunt by dawn or dusk, or vice versa. If they ever met, it'd likely be a tense standoff. Dingoes in packs versus a big solitary bear. I'd bet the bear, if large, would win one-on-one easily, but the dog pack might dissuade it from meddling too much. Also, smaller predators like Tasmanian devils, quolls and eagles might end up scavenging after the bear's kills. A mob of wallaroos or a group of emus might take extra care around areas known to harbour our bear. Koalas would keep even higher up in the canopy. What about the rest of the ecosystem? A large omnivore like this would become a keystone species. It could keep herbivore populations in check, say by preying on sick kangaroos or feral pigs, and that would help vegetation. Its digging and foraging would turn over soil and spread seeds. For instance, if it eats bush apples or berry shrubs, its droppings could disperse those seeds far afield. It might even help aerate termite mounds while raiding them, which could benefit certain plants. Tourists and researchers would be fascinated. Of course, farmers might not love it eating a calf now and then, but like dingoes, the bear might mostly stick to wild prey unless driven scarce. Finally, after all this dreaming, how do we wrap up? Well, the whole point of this creature is to get us thinking creatively and scientifically at once. In a way, we've sketched Australia's perfect bear, a muscular marsupial-like omnivore with wombat roots, devilish claws, and bearish habitats. Something that could believably fit into Aussie prehistory or an alternate ecosystem. Now I want your input. What would you call this bear? Drop bear is already taken, but maybe Aussie Bruin, bush bear or something. Whatever name you like, drop it in the comments or send it along. I'd love to hear your ideas. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. You can also leave a comment with what you would like to see in the following videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.